Hi everyone, thank you so much for tuning in today for the fourth episode of the Plant Peace podcast. Today we're going to be reading directly from my book, Plant Peace. We're going to be talking about cows, goats, chickens, and ducks. Wait, no. Cows, goats, chickens, and turkeys. Yeah, ducks and geese are going to be likely the next episode. The following episodes are... We're going to see. There's an interview I did that I'm going to release when a certain press release comes out. So that one might very well be next week. Next weekend. Wow, that's kind of crazy. Oh no, I go on Sunday. Well, on Sunday I go to Hawaii. So, so we'll see what I post next weekend, and then we'll see what happens when I'm in Hawaii, what I end up doing. I might read from a chapter. I might be interviewing someone from Aloha Animal Sanctuary there. So that's kind of all up in the air. I've also been doing some research on some animals that weren't included in the book. I was going to talk about those soon, but now I'm not so sure because there's more research I need to do. So honestly, next couple episodes are pretty up in the air, but today we're going to just be reading from the book, so this will be a pretty simple one. I hope that everyone's having a really, really lovely day today. Today's been my first, my least depressing day. I've been kind of in a grieving state the past few days, which we will discuss hopefully next week. But yeah, I've been feeling better today. I reached out to some people because I was like, okay, stagnancy isn't being helpful. So I went on a walk with a friend this morning and then had a phone call with another friend and then just spent like maybe 3 hours cleaning the kitchen, which felt really good because it's just been like kind of meh. And whenever we clean it, it's just been like baseline cleaning and it needed a good clean. So got that done and now I'm here with you. And then later tonight there's this like forum for talking about why we should pass an ordinance in town to let people not mow their lawns. And I'm going to learn more about that. So yeah, so it's been a nice day and I'm excited to be here and to talk to you guys. So without further ado, let's just get into it. Alrighty. Cows. For those of you listening, I mentioned this last week, but I am also recording all these, and these are going to be on YouTube. So there's a lot of pictures in my book, so I can show the pictures to the people watching on screen, but not to you guys listening. So this right here is baby Watson. He lives at Iowa Farm Sanctuary. He is such a cutie. He has some disabilities, has a bit of a hard time, but the people there really take care of them. At the sanctuary, they kind of focus on special needs animals. Not all of their animals are special needs, but they are very, very good with special needs animals. So there's a lot of animals with maybe 3 legs or some prosthetics, or, someone has a wheelchair or different things like that. So it's really, really lovely because some animals that maybe other places wouldn't be willing to take in because of the extra work and the extra money and the vet care and all of that, Iowa Farm Sanctuary does their best to make sure that they can, take in anyone that they can. So they're really, really lovely. I volunteer there and I love it and I'm excited to go back. Alrighty. Personally, cows are some of my favorite animals. They are extremely gentle, cautious, loving, and friendly. They have a sense of smell so strong that they can detect odor from up to 5 miles away. Their ears can pick up both lower and higher frequencies than we're able to detect, and they have panoramic vision. Across the world, there are about 920 different breeds of cows. Mother cows form strong bonds with their children, and when given the chance, will sometimes nurse them up to 3 years old. They are social animals that form friendships with one another and will avoid those who they dislike. As you're probably well aware, across the world, these gentle giants are brutalized. They're mainly used for their flesh, milk, skin, and in rodeos. Before we get into the nasty details, let's get one thing straight. The dairy industry is the meat industry. In the U.S. alone, over 39 million cows are killed in the meat and dairy industries. 4 companies, Tyson, National Beef, JBS Swift, and Cargill, slaughter 80% of the cows in the United States. In 2016, 300 million cows were killed globally. Cows raised for their flesh are typically kept in confined feeding operations, where they may be dehorned, castrated, and branded without painkillers. Many cows spend their first 6 months of life on a pasture. They're the ones you see grazing in fenced-in fields along highways. The cow-calf operation is the first stage of beef production, and often occurs on these type of farms. Mother cows generally give birth in the late winter. Branding, vaccinations, and castration occur in April for the calves. Then, in the early summer, the cows are artificially inseminated again. By October, calves are torn from their mothers in a process called weaning. Weaned calves generally go right to the sale barn, where they're auctioned off by the pound to feedlots. Nearly every cow raised for their flesh spends the last 6 months of their life in a feedlot, simply because it can make or break if a farmer will make a couple extra bucks on them. Cows used to be about 4 to 5 years old before being slaughtered. Now, they reach their desired weight of about 1,200 pounds at 14 to 16 months old. This does not occur naturally. It's due to an intensive diet mainly consisting of corn, soy, and hormones. This diet can actually kill their sensitive stomachs if not accompanied heavily with antibiotics. This is why cows are often pasture-raised the first half of their short lives, because if they were fed feedlot diets their whole lives, it's possible their liver would explode. The food fed to them is deeply unnatural, with additives such as feather meal and chicken manure being put into the food sometimes. Feedlot bloat is the most deadly occurrence from this dietary switch. A cow's rumen is constantly producing gas, which is normally released during rumination. However, a diet heavily in starch halts this process, causing a layer of slime to develop and prevent the gas from releasing. The rumen inflates and the cow can suffocate to death. This is precisely why after 6 months they're sent to slaughter. How much profit do you think they make with each life they auction off? $100, $200, $500, $1,000? A life surely can't be worth less than that, right? According to Cattle Facts, a market research firm, the return on an animal coming out of feedlot has averaged just $3 per head in the last 20 years. Astonishing. I do want to note that that is the average of the last 20 years. And where I'm getting this fact this is a textbook called CAFO, Concentrated Animal Feeding Operations, and it's like a massive textbook about CAFOs, and it was super informative. I recommend it if you want to learn more about this stuff, but it was published in 2010, so this is a bit out of date. I don't know what the current one is, but I doubt it's that much more, and this is also the average, so some people will be maybe making less or more, but like I always assumed that it must be several hundreds of dollars per cow. Like that was always my assumption. But you know, when you look into like, okay, well you have to pay for the land and you have to pay to feed them and to give them a lot of water, and also are you paying yourself for labor? And also you have to pay people to transport them. You have to pay for the gas. You have to pay the slaughterhouse. Or I believe you have to, well, I guess you sell them to the slaughterhouse. But anyways, it's like, it's a lot. It's a lot that goes into killing an animal unless you just do it all on your property. So I mean, it's kind of crazy. Like I can't imagine feeling like it's worth it to send someone to slaughter for $3. And sometimes it's less. If they don't go to feedlots, sometimes they lose money on it. And so it's like, I think it's maddening. I can't imagine wanting to do that. I don't think a lot of these people want to do that. And that's something I get into later in the book when I really talk about humans. But like, I don't think a lot of people necessarily want to be doing the jobs they're in, period. Like in most industries. But I think with animal agriculture, people aren't doing it because they love to abuse animals. Some probably are. I mean, I feel like it's a perfect industry to go into if you love harming anyone. But I feel like most people aren't doing it because they just get a kick out of it. They're doing it because they're trying to make a living, and that this is likely the industry they were born into. Which is why I think it's really important that healthy and practical alternatives are made available so that those that want to switch out of this can. Because we really need that switch. I might even literally talk about it later in this chapter, but there's something called the Rancher Advocacy Program, and it's specifically to help ranchers get out of farming cows and to start farming plants. And it was made by a couple who used to be cattle farmers, and now they have a vegan sanctuary. So anything's possible. Change is possible. Even if it's like something you've done your entire life, break the cycle. Do it. I dare you. Anyways, getting back to the book. Diving deeper into this industry, let's look into the process of artificial insemination. Male cows are typically bred for their flesh and their semen, but only the best bull is chosen for that role. Those deemed fit will be masturbated by a human who uses their hand, a machine, or they will electrocute their balls until they ejaculate. They then use this sperm to artificially inseminate the female cow in what the industry calls a rape rack. It's exactly what it sounds like. That's really a term that they use. I think they've stopped using it for the most part because the vegans found out and they really like letting people know that. But that's legitimately what it is. If someone was shoving semen into you to forcibly impregnate you so that they could hold you captive and then steal your babies and hook your breast up to machines to take your milk, what would you call those things? What would you call the crimes being committed against you? I can think of some words, and I say them here. Practically all female cows are sent to dairies to have their reproductive systems exploited. They are forcibly impregnated starting at the young age of 2. They will have a 9-month pregnancy and begin producing milk for their baby. Once giving birth, their baby is stolen from them. Sometimes this is done immediately. Often it is within 24 to 48 hours of giving birth. Mother cows are known to grieve for days. They will cry, mourn, and even search for their stolen babies, sometimes chasing the trucks that take them away. Now that the farmer has removed her baby and sent them to live in confinement with the other stolen youth, they can steal the mother cow's milk. She will be hooked up to a milking machine on average 2 times a day. Monsanto, the same company spraying poison onto her plants, is also responsible for producing something called recombinant bovine growth hormone, RBGH, which spikes milk production. Not all farmers use this, but it's definitely not an uncommon practice in the US, especially when the ultimate goal is profit. This is also why, in order to make sure her milk supply is steady, she will be impregnated once a year and have to repeat the traumatizing process again and again and again. Cows can live an average of 20 to 25 years. However, in the dairy industry, mothers only make it to about 4 to 6, often due to illness. At this point, when they're no longer deemed profitable, they are sent to slaughter. This is a quote. Each year, 20% of dairy cows develop severe calcium deficiency, which if untreated can lead to death or mastitis, an inflammation of udder tissue by coliform bacteria, which can thrive in even the cleanest of dairies. Untreated mastitis infections and other udder problems have become so pervasive in the United States that they are responsible for sending nearly a quarter of dairy cows to slaughter each year. My mom, actually, she was one of like the 2 primary people that edited this book for me. And when she was reading a section, she called me to let me know that when it was either not my pregnancy, but her pregnancy with me or with my brother, afterwards, I think, she got mastitis. And it was like one of the most painful things she's ever experienced in her life. Like, I think she had fevers from it. It was terrible. And that's, treated mastitis. Like, she was able to get help for it. But a lot of these animals, once they get sick, they're just garbage, because why are you going to spend money to treat a sick animal when that's going to just lose you money at the end of the day? It's Not saying no one does it, but it's just unfortunately the way people who view animals as just profit operate. Yeah, so it's just garbage. Let's take a look at what's happened to their babies in this time period. If the calf was female, then she will be sent to a facility where she will most likely be chained or fenced into a little hut for the first several months of her life. There are some like group housing calf facilities that are a bit less restrictive, but like ultimately they were still kidnapped and they're being held captive. She will be fed artificial milk because humans are stealing the milk meant for her. And when she's old enough, she'll suffer the same fate as her mother. Males, on the other hand, are often immediately murdered or sent to be raised for veal, baby cow meat. That's what veal is. Luna just spooked me. I didn't know she was there. Okay. Whew. Hi, Luna. Sometimes they're... Oh, hi. I love her little sounds. Sometimes they are raised to adulthood and then later killed. Hello. He wants to join the party. Oh, good girl. In order to gather information for this book, I read the entirety of the book CAFO, Concentrated Animal Feeding Operation. In it, on page 152, the term humanely raised pasture veal can be found. No, that's a rock for the table. Please let it stay there. This is infuriating for me because it implies that there is a benevolent or compassionate way to steal a child from their mother, raise them elsewhere, and then slaughter them in their infancy. I honestly find it hard to imagine a crime so deeply harmful. You may be wondering, what about small, local, organic farms? Organic means practically nothing regarding animal treatment. It largely concerns the food they're being fed. Local doesn't mean ethical. Any farm is local to someone. Let me say that again. All factory farms are local to someone. But let's entertain the idea that local farms are more ethical because I have a personal anecdote I'd like to share. Before I share that, I do want to pause. I think in general, not necessarily speaking about animal farming, but in general, when it comes to like the products. Okay, ma'am, I'm going to put you down, but I love you. I think in general, when it comes to like the products we buy, like the food we buy, all of that, local is ideal because it's moving less to get to you essentially. So, you know, like going to the farmer's market and getting food there, if that's like an option for you, if that's accessible, then like I think that is definitely ideal. This isn't to like shit on the idea of localized farming. I think that is fantastic, but I think just because something is local to you does not mean it's ethical, like at all. Like just because someone stabbed that cow in the throat a mile from me doesn't make me feel any better than if they did it 50 miles from me. Same thing if they were to do it to dogs or cats or humans or literally anyone else. Like the distance to me does not change the fact that someone was exploited and killed for this, you know? Hello. Like if you're getting something from like a local sweatshop, like obviously that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make it more ethical. It would be more ethical to get something that is produced in a way that is beneficial for the people producing it and the environment and all of that, even if it's like further away from you, you know? That's something to think about. Hello, Luna. Okay, so back to my anecdote. When I first toured MIU, I was told about this wonderful dairy farm they use called Radiance Dairy. People spoke of this place as if it was Luna, I'm going to need you to not do that right now. Pretty please. Oh no. Nope. No thanks. She's super playful right now. And I would love to play with her, but I'm doing this, so I'm going to have to do that later. Luna, no thank you. Okay. Just gonna go again. When I first toured MIU, I was told about this wonderful dairy farm that they use called Radiance Dairy. People spoke of this place like it was a sanctuary, stating that they don't kill their cows and they get to keep their babies and they play music for the cows and it's all organic and just so wonderful. This felt way too fanciful to be the truth, so I asked for a tour of the farm. Surprisingly, they obliged. While conditions on this farm, comparatively to factory operations, were better, they certainly weren't good. The cows wore collars with numbers on them and they were skittish around humans. The milking room was full of machines that looked quite unpleasant. They artificially inseminated yearly, and once the baby is born, they allow them to stay with their mother for up to 4 months to bond. Then they're kidnapped. If the cows live to be over 10, then they get to retire on a different farm, but if they prove to be unprofitable before then, and I quote the farmer here, they become McDonald's. Better than the worst still isn't good. The dairy and meat industry is riddled with the worst crimes we can imagine being committed against humans, yet we accept this violence as normal for other species every day. Now, let's take a look at the effect this is having on the oppressors, humans, for a moment. With approximately 9 million dairy cows in the US alone, each drinking about 12,000 gallons of water annually, this is a very low estimate and does not include water used for feed, cleaning, transportation, etc., then about 108 billion gallons of water are consumed by cows used in the dairy industry every year. Worldwide, there are about 264 million dairy cows at any given moment. Each year, these cows directly drink over 3 trillion gallons of water. In comparison, when considering the same factors, one human will consume about 365 gallons of water a year, which is a super high estimate. Right now, about 1 in 3 people worldwide lack access to clean drinking water. 1 in 3. Next to many of these areas facing water insecurity are dairy farms in which the cows will never face the worry of not having enough food or water for the duration of their enslavement. Often their flesh and secretions are sent to the Western world for consumption. I do want to note, sometimes these farms do actually run out of money and they're not able to feed the animals and they slowly starve to death. I've heard of this happening multiple times for multiple different farmed species. If we were to stop forcibly breeding dairy cows into existence and wasting over 3 trillion gallons of water every year just for their consumption, then we could drastically change the climate regarding water insecurity. We have more than enough water and food to nourish our population without exploiting others. If you would like to look into how these methods of farming are harming the environment, please watch the documentary Cowspiracy on Netflix or YouTube. I will also be discussing it further in later chapters. In addition to being used for consumption, cows are also used for entertainment, mainly in the rodeo or for bullfighting. I'm not going to go into depth regarding bullfighting here because of how uncommon the practice is, but if you'd like to see a watered-down version of it, then just watch the children's movie Ferdinand. What I am going to speak about is the rodeo. Common injuries for cows and horses used at rodeos include broken backs, tails, legs, and necks, punctured lungs, internal organ damage, and death. These damages occur in practice sessions as well. For example, a calf may be roped multiple times until their injuries are too impactful and a replacement victim is brought in. Often, 2 to 3 cows are cycled through a single practice session. Many die in the practice arena. In the actual event, calves are tormented inside of pens before being released. Their tails will likely be twisted and they'll be shocked with metal prods up until the gate opens. At this point, they burst out of the pen to avoid the torment and are instead met with a rope around the neck, snapping them to the ground. Okay, she wants to go outside. Spook. Oh my god. Okay. This chair just kind of goes back a lot. Also, I just feel like someone one day might comment. This is not real leather. Great. Do I talk about leather in here? I think that's one of the things I actually don't. Craziness. So cows are also used for leather, which you're probably aware of. I'm going to make a mental note and I'm going to readdress this later, because that is actually like a whole different industry than this. Sometimes they're like coupled together, but there's like a whole separate leather industry. Some cows are specifically like bred for their, not their flesh, but their skin. So I'm gonna touch that later. I'm gonna mental note bing. Okay, great. Their tails will likely be twisted and they'll be shocked with metal prods up until the gate opens. At this point, they burst out of the pen to avoid the torment and are instead met with a rope around the neck, snapping them to the ground. This act alone kills many calves. Interesting how grown men are viewed as tough by American society when they harass and murder baby animals. What does that say about our society? I'm gonna just pause one more time. So, I went to a rodeo protest once. It was in Salt Lake City. And the people there, so interesting. But one man specifically, he was an older fella. He was like, you don't understand. Like, the people that come to the rodeo are the best people in the world. And I was like, okay, please explain to me why the people that come to the rodeo are the best people in the whole world. And he was like, they love America. They stand for the national anthem. They love this country. And I was like, okay, so why does loving America make you the best person in the whole world? And he literally just like angrily huffed and walked away. I just think that's so interesting. Like the nationalistic mindset that's just like in rodeo culture in the US is just so fascinating. So fascinating. But I feel like nationalism is a topic for another day. But I just kind of wanted to like ping that in there because it was just so, I've just honestly never been so baffled by an encounter like that before. Maybe I have, but that one really stuck. So we're going to keep going. The animals used in these shows, specifically cows, are naturally peaceful beings. In order to force them into fear-based behaviors, they use tools of terror. An example of this is an electric prod known as a hot shot. This is used on both the calves and full-grown cows. Straps with spikes are often fastened tightly around bulls' stomachs and their groin area to make them buck in an attempt to get it off. For bull riding in particular, if the sport doesn't kill them, then they'll be sent to slaughter once they're deemed unusable. Dr. C.G. Harbour, a veterinarian who has worked for 30 years as a USDA meat inspector, stated that the rodeo folks send their animals to the packing houses where I've seen cattle so extensively bruised that the only area in which the skin was attached was the head, neck, legs, and belly. Wow. I've seen animals with 6 to 8 ribs broken from the spine and at times punctured lungs. I have seen as much as 2 to 3 gallons of free blood accumulate under the detached skin. There are many more horrific practices in the rodeo that I'm not going to touch on here. However, I strongly suggest looking at the page sourced below from the Humane Society Veterinarian Medical Association to learn more. With all of the above in mind, I would like to remind you that virtually all cows who are raised in factory farms, in grassy fields, and in the entertainment industry all go to the same place to die, and that place is absolutely horrific. I've seen trucks filled with well over 30 cows enter the gates of a slaughterhouse, followed by a small trailer holding just one friendly cow. Feeding and looking after someone does not give us the right to take their life away from them when it's convenient for us. The ride to the slaughterhouse can be short, as some cows live right across the street from one another and are forced to smell the blood of their kin constantly. Other journeys are much longer. Sometimes cows are shipped overseas to be slaughtered. This process is horrendous for animals, as the waves rock the ship and their captives back and forth relentlessly, and those who die or are severely ill are generally thrown overboard. Recently, a ship left from Spain headed to Turkey with 1,789 cows in it. When they arrived at their destination, the captain was told that they are not allowed to disembark because they may contain a virus. The ship then spent 3 months wandering, trying to find a place to unload, and eventually ended up back in Spain. At this point, 179 cows had died. The rest were in unimaginable conditions. They lived on top of piles of their own feces and the bodies of those who had not been thrown to sea. Many of the animals were unable to lay down in the crowded and disgusting conditions. A quarter of them had skin injuries, others had broken horns or tails. All of the survivors on the ship were then murdered. This is Arlo the cow who lives at Iowa Farm Sanctuary and is happy and not being exploited. This is ending up a little bit longer than I actually expected it to. Just because I know the chicken section is literally so long. So I might actually... What do I want to do? I might actually just read the goats, and that might be it for today. We might just do a little bit of a shorter episode. Just because the chicken section's kind of huge, because there's a lot to deal with in that section. And I feel like about a 40-minute episode is good. So we're gonna talk about goats, and then we're gonna conclude this episode. I didn't expect to have so many tangents about cows. Goats. This is Beth, a resident at Iowa Farm Sanctuary. A lot of the pictures are from there. And when it is spring, summertime, these books will be available for sale there. So that'll be cool. In their natural environment, goats live in social herds, roaming around mountain grasslands and enjoying their freedom. Goats are playful, inquisitive, and highly intelligent. They love to explore and closely investigate anything new to them. Their coordination is remarkable, allowing them to scale cliff sides and even climb trees. Goat mothers are known to be nurturing and attentive, which is why they're often chosen to foster abandoned calves and lambs. They can live to be 18 years old and form deep bonds with their young. Unfortunately, just like the cows in the dairy industry, mama goats also have their kids and lives stolen from them. A piece of information I found surprising is that a majority of the dairy consumed globally is actually produced by goats. While being fairly unpopular in the US, goat flesh is the most consumed red meat in the world. Raised for their flesh and their milk, just like cows, 450 million goats were slaughtered in 2016. The manner in which they are treated is largely the same. Due to this, I will not be going into detail here since you already read about these practices. If you would like a visual image of what the standard industry practice of goat farming looks like, please watch the video on YouTube, Goat Milk, The Ethical Alternative, by Earthling Ed. All of his videos are fantastic. Literally all of them. If you are questioning going vegan or just looking into a plant-based lifestyle, or even if like you're just interested in animal rights, or you feel like you have some arguments for it, go through his channel. Just watch Earthling Ed's videos. They are fantastic. He's so well articulated. He's just grown so much as a human being through the past several years. I've adored just like watching him flourish. So yeah, Earthling Ed, go check him out. He's also just so nice. Anyways, several months ago, my partner and I participated in an emergency hen rescue that I'll discuss in later chapters. Next week. Probably. Maybe. We drove them to Broken Shovel's farm sanctuary in Colorado. The sanctuary owner, Andrea, shared her story with us. Now, I'd like to share it with you. Formerly, the sanctuary was a goat dairy. She was convinced that she could run an ethical dairy and worked very hard to make that a reality. She didn't do any of the standard procedures, like debudding, searing a kid's horns off, or castration, cutting off a goat's balls, typically done with a tight rubber band. She was instead kind to the goats, refused to send them to slaughter, and adopted the kids to good homes. What she learned was that there is not an ethical way to separate families against their will and take what is not yours. The mothers would grieve for days, crying out and searching for their kids. Watching them go through this process because of her actions was unbearable. So she transformed her farm into a sanctuary. She kept all the goats she had and stopped exploiting them for profit. Her sanctuary now has over 500 animals, with about half of them being goats. She is a true example of aligning your actions with your ethics. Okay, this is me with a goat. This is not from that sanctuary. But there's like two images. This goat's just so... Okay, I'll just show it to you. This goat's just so sweet. He's just like... So the next thing he does is he just like headbutts me, but in like the most loving way. Like it was like the most gentle little head nudge you could just imagine. It was so good. He is So good. Goats are like, oh my god. Goats just have my heart. I just love goats so much. I think they're so sweet and kind and gentle and good. And sometimes a little aggressive, but oh my gosh. I love goats. Goats are like top tier animal, honestly. I like them so much. Alrighty, so a little bit shorter of an episode today. The chicken section is just long, and I feel like the chicken, ducks, geese, and turkeys can just be its whole episode. That sounds like a good episode. Just kind of clump all those birds together. So I think we're gonna do that for, I don't know, next week. Next week just might be the interview, or maybe it will be next week, or maybe the following week. I literally have no idea, but I appreciate you for tuning in today and just kind of joining this like wild roller coaster of a podcast. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send them to me. Do you want to talk about this now? So someone who does listen to this podcast did ask me some questions, actually. So I do want to take a second to address them here now. So they were asking, well, what about hunting that is basically to control populations when they're overpopulated? So, like deer can actually be very harmful to an environment when their numbers are high. And I think, first of all, it's a good question. It's a super valid question. Something that like I personally think is that it's super bold for humans to be like, they're overpopulated and destroying the environment because, broadly gestures to humans. I understand why we do that, and like it is valid. Some species do really mess up some environments when they get too overpopulated, but so do humans. And for the most part, we don't think that like mass killing off humans is a great solution to dealing with overpopulation. And so I think it's just interesting how we are willing to kill off other species because they are being inconvenient and harmful, but that's like obviously not a route that we want to take with humans, or at least many of us. I know some people would disagree, but just kind of interesting. But now to like actually address the question. So there are situations in which there are too many animals present. Often I think it's because of human intervention. So I've heard about a species being introduced into an environment by humans, and then they actually thrive and they do great and they start destroying the other species. And it's like, wow, crazy. That literally happened because humans introduced them. And now they're like, gotta kill them. And so it kind of seems like human intervention is often the problem. And if we just like left the environment alone or just like took care of it, then maybe the environment could regulate itself. Maybe we actually don't need to regulate the environment. Maybe nature just knows what it's doing. Another example of this is with deer, or I can actually speak to elk, but deer specifically. So and I talk about this later in further chapters when I address predator animals. So like wolves, bears, cougars, coyotes are a big one. And when I say we, I mean humans, kill like so many of them. It's truly crazy. I mean, Idaho recently passed a bill to kill 90% of the state's wolves. And you know what they're probably going to be complaining about in the following year? A deer overpopulation. And it's because we kill off all of their natural predators. So of course their population's going to boom because we're murdering everyone who would normally be killing them. And the thing is like when wolves hunt, it's sustenance hunting. They have to hunt to survive. And they also hunt in a very different way than humans do. Humans like to be like, oh wow, that's gonna look good on my wall. So I'm gonna kill the biggest buck I can and the biggest antlers, and I'm gonna feel great about myself. That is the worst kind of hunting for populations, because when you're looking at like gene pools and populations, they want the best genes to survive. It's kind of like survival of the fittest, So when we're killing like the top tier genetics, it is detrimental for them moving forward. And so the way that like wolves hunt, for example, they're not going for the biggest, baddest one. They're going for the one that's a bit behind the group. They're going for the one that's maybe older or sick. And that preserves an ideal genetic pool moving forward for these animals. And so the way in which humans go about doing these things is really harmful. And like there's literally coyote killing contest You know, coyotes are an impressive one, though. Their numbers are able to, like, jump back even with humans killing them, which I don't think justifies us killing them, but coyotes are super interesting. I talked about this in the coyote section. But I think in general, if we were to maybe, like, shift our mindset about it and, like, look at doing things in ways that, like, don't involve murder, then I think a lot of these problems would, like, naturally resolve on their own. I think there are some instances in which, like, it maybe is, like, the better decision, but I feel like in most circumstances that's not true. Like, I don't think that we need to be killing deer. I think we need to not be killing predators that would normally be killing deer, and we can just, like, allow the ecosystem to balance out. And also, people who are sustenance hunters can interact with that ecosystem as well. But realistically, most of us are not sustenance hunters and do not need to be sustenance hunters. A lot of us go to the grocery store for most of the things we buy, and so it going out and hunting is for pleasure. It's not for, you know, need. So to sum my answer, I think in some situations, it may be what needs to be done, but in most situations, I don't think that that is true. That's something that I can definitely do more research on, and I did do more research on in that section. But we're gonna get to that then. But I just wanted to address that question today. So yeah, so if anyone else has any questions that they would like addressed, it's likely that I answer a lot of the questions in the book, but I'm super happy to just talk about them on here. You know, can address them multiple times. Sometimes people don't watch all the episodes, you just watch one. So I'm so happy to answer any questions that you guys may have. And I hope that you guys all have a super, super lovely rest of your night or day or whatever time it is. If you enjoyed this podcast, you know, please maybe leave a review of it. Like, you can find us on YouTube, give us a little like. We have a Facebook page that you could follow. It's called Plant Peace. You know, if you want to get the book, if you want to read ahead of the podcast, then you can check that out on Barnes & Nobles or Amazon or like a lot of smaller online bookstores. If you just type in Plant Peace Shine Holiday, you can find that. And also, if you are semi-local, then you can just contact me and I can just give you a signed copy. Or I can mail you one if you really, really want a signed copy. So yeah, really whatever works. But I love you guys so much, and I hope that you have a beautiful night.